Now recently I just graduated high school, and that means I'm going to college soon. I'm in the shop trying to build as much product and film as much content as I can before I leave. Now I am going to school for woodworking technology, so I'm pretty excited for it, and I think there's going to be a lot of content and stuff to build there, but I do want to spend as much time in my own shop as I can before I leave. Now before I started making content for this channel, I ran it for about 2 years. One of my favorite things to build were these little cookbook stands. In this video I'm going to make a couple of them, but they're going to look a little different than that one. Now last week I ordered a whole bunch of live edge walnut, so that should be coming in the next couple of days. For the video after this, I'm going to make a whole bunch of live edge walnut charcuterie boards. For now, I'm going to use the extra wood that I have lying around the shop to make 3 cookbook stands. I'm going to take these 3 pieces that I just cut up and I'm going to take the bark off of them. These are going to be the backrests for these stands. For the base of these stands, I'm going to use these walnut slabs that I have lying around because they weren't big enough to make charcuterie boards out of them. I'm going to cut them to their final length and then I'm going to take them over to the bandsaw and rip them down the middle. I only want these boards 3 inches wide because that's all we need. Now the chisel gets most of the wood off, but I'm going to go in with some 60 grit sandpaper and clean these up. I just got this new sander and I'm loving it. With my last sander, it would take a long time to do all this bark, but with this new one, it only took a couple minutes. Now to ensure I have a good glue joint on the bottom of these boards, I'm going to joint them. Then I'm going to line them up and see how they look. Now I'm just getting a good look at the grains here and seeing what looks nicest together. Before I do my measuring and drilling, I'm going to make sure the back edge is at least flat. I only cut it on the bandsaw freehand. Now this will let me use my square and measure out the distance I want the pegs to be. For these stands, I'm not going to do an arch like you saw in the image in the beginning. I'm going to drill some holes and put 2 pieces of dowel to hold the book open. Now these backboards were a little thicker than they needed to be, so I'm just going to plane them down to get them a little thinner. I'm going to use this little tool here and figure out exactly what size drill bit I need. I originally think I want to do a size smaller so that I can hammer the dowel wood in, but as you're going to see later on in the video, it doesn't work for me. I do my test fit and I think that's going to hammer in fine, so I drill all my holes out and cut all my dowels and sand up these boards thinking everything's going swell. And then when I'm trying to assemble these, I realize that my holes might be a little too small, even though I sanded a taper on my dowels. So here I am trying to hammer this dowel in and it doesn't want to go. So I slowly make my way back to the drill press. I grab a bit, a size up, and drill out all my holes and fix my mistake. Now would you look at that? The dowels just fit right in there perfectly. It's like I used the right bit or something. I ran into the house and stole my mom's cookbook just so you guys could see what it would look like. Now I'm just going to glue everything up, clamp it, and wait overnight for it to dry. You could wait for the glue to dry and then sand it off, but I find it a lot easier to wipe it off when it's wet so I don't have to worry about it later. I'm still going to have to do a little bit of sanding, but it's not going to be a whole bunch. Once everything's dry and unclamped, I'm going to go in there by hand and sand out all the glue marks that I see. Before gluing these up, I didn't sand these boards to their final grits. I kinda got excited and jumped the gun there. It would be a lot easier if I went in and sanded them all up before I glued them, because then I wouldn't have to do all this work when it's assembled. But it's not the worst thing in the world. I got a good podcast on and a good sander, and I'm not complaining at all. So now that the dowels are in and everything's glued up, it's time to make the backrest. I'm going to mill up some walnut, and then I'm going to take it over to my table saw, rip it down to its final width, and then I'm going to use my miter gauge and cut these on a 20-degree angle. You can use whatever angle you want, but I use 20 degrees because it looks nice and it's a good balance point for the stand. So I'm going to screw these into the back of the boards to make our stands. That means I got to use a countersink bit to make the screws fit in nicely. So I'm just going to set up the stop on my drill press and drill away. So once all these kickstands are pre-drilled, I'm ready to assemble. I'm going to find the center of the board and then screw them in. So you could put a little bit of glue on the back of these, but I didn't feel the need to. These wood screws will hold it in just fine. So as I was doing another test fit with this cookbook, I realized that the dowels might be a little longer than they need to be. I don't need the dowels that long, and that's just getting in the way of people trying to read the book. I'm going to take my saw to them and cut them down to 2.5 inches. There we go, that looks a lot better. It doesn't affect the function of these stands at all. It still holds the book wide open, but it looks a lot more aesthetically pleasing. Now since all the dowels are glued up at the same time, they're all too long. After I'm done assembling the back, I'm going to take it over to the vise and cut them all down. And once they're cut, they're rough. I'm going to take a bit of 150 grit sandpaper and then 400 to smooth them all out. This last board had a bit of a crack in the back. I just filled it up with some glue there, and now it's dry enough that I can sand it off. So we're just going to assemble the back like all the others, sand it up, and get it ready for finishing. Alright, these stands are almost done. Look at that, we're only 6 minutes into the video. I'm just going to cut the dowels down on this last stand, and then I'm going to bring these over to the table for finishing. And of course, I'm going to do one final test fit with the cookbook. Rum raisin shortbread. Looks pretty good. There you have it. A bunch of cookbook stands finished up and ready to be sold. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. For the people who watched to the end of the video, thanks very much. I appreciate all of you. If you enjoyed this video, maybe consider subscribing. It helps a lot.